Thank you, Chairman. Well, Gareth, it's unusual to find you sitting at the front table rather than to our right, assisting us ably. So, and I'd like to thank you because the depth of information you give us all is fantastic. When I read this report, I was prompted to ask a general question, first of all, which is that we sit round this table and we hear government departments, they come here annually or whatever and sit there and go disappear for a year and come back. And we're told, and I've come onto the committee relatively recently, but I keep hearing of stories of where things haven't improved, things haven't changed, things haven't got better. So I thought to myself when I read your proposal, your sort of outline proposal, is there a case for this committee and with your help to do actually less audits, but do them in greater depth, actually help this committee to focus on taxpayer waste, on departmental waste, whether it's assignment contracts, whatever it is? Is there a reason for a smaller, lighter, more aggressive National Audit Office, which actually does less audits, but does them in, basically actually goes into huge detail and then makes constructive criticisms? Because I from where I sit, I see the state is less efficient than the private sector, and yet nobody's holding it to account. So I'm asking you the question really, could we trim this budget, make it more effective by cutting down, laser focusing our attack, and if government departments aren't performing, there should be consequences, sackings, the sort of thing that happens in the private sector, accountability. Because I think it's accountability that we're not seeing from all of these state bodies that we're looking at. So I just wonder whether there isn't an argument for less but more incisive audits.
There was obviously a lot in there. If I just talk about the NAO for a second, because the accountability framework is a bit different, of course. But for the NAO, as you'll note, the bulk of our work and staffing is focused on the financial audit of government's accounts and public body accounts. So that's not something we choose a discretionary level of. We do the audits we're required to do by statute. That work has been going up in volume in the last few years, as it has in the private sector as well. As you'll know from private sector experience, the requirements on audits have significantly ratcheted up in the last few years. We've been subject to that along with everyone else. I'm very confident that we're delivering high quality audits for Parliament's assurance on the accuracy of those accounts. So there's a choice.
That I don't doubt at all.
And that's the bulk of our work. That's 2/3 of our work and our staff and our budget. So the bit that the PAC engages with more frequently is our value for money work, and that's I think that fits your bill actually of tightly specified and very carefully targeted to have maximum impact. It's about 22% of our budget and work. That hasn't increased over the last few years. We've essentially held that fairly level for the last few years because we think that gives the capacity that the committee can use to make effective scrutiny of people spending public money. But we work really hard to do exactly what you've described, which is how do we maximise the impact of this work? That's what drives us. And so we're not just kind of trotting out routine audits of it's this department's turn to have a VFM review from the NAO. We carefully look to see where are the big risks to value for money, where could we have most impact. We stay, to your point about staying on the issues to make sure there's change, we do that. And I think the combined effect of the NAO's focus and the committee's focus has achieved progress actually in some areas. And I think the relentless focus on the poorly performing major projects such as HS2, I think we have broken through there with some much better governance arrangements being implemented for big new projects like Sizewell now. They'll need to demonstrate they work in practice, of course, but those are big changes that wouldn't have happened without our work and without the committee's work. And there are other examples of that too. But I think your point about do we stand back and say, well, how do we make best use of this scarce resource? Our VFM budget is in the 20 millions. If you think about the £1 trillion of public spending every year we're scrutinising with that, it's a tiny level of effort. So where I agree with you is it's important we make sure that really delivers what it can deliver to the maximum. And I think we do get a lot of value from that. The asylum work we did before Christmas was a pretty innovative way of looking at an end-to-end system, exposing how that, some of those well-known blockages, but actually lots of less well-known areas where that could be improved. And I think that has been influential within government, and it's making them look at those things a bit differently. We're going to do more of that kind of thing as well. And so, getting the committee's feedback on what the committee is finding most useful in doing its job, that's what we try and build into our programme. So that's the way we run it.
I thought you might enjoy becoming a Spartan rather than a Persian, but anyway. But being driven by outcomes, which I am, and having run private sector businesses, if the statute is loading you with too much work, then it's our job to change the statute if you think it needs to be changed. I wouldn't just accept that. I think what we need to do is deliver value for money for the taxpayer, because I just see money disappearing down the drain and then the taxpayer being asked to pay more tax.
Well, let me come back on that. We produced the report that the committee's used recently, arguing for a reduction in the reporting requirements on small public bodies, because we think they have gone too far, and we think they bog down those small teams with things that are actually getting in the way of the core business. And equivalently, that's meaning we're having to audit things that don't need auditing.
Yep.
So where we spot opportunities like that to streamline what's required and reduce the work for us, then we take them.
Well, I just asked the question because generally it's a generous question about your budget. Could we trim it and make it more effective? But look, I make the point. I make, with regard to AI and the digital revolution, which we're all having to run hard to keep up with. I've been doing a lot of work legally recently, and my barrister tells me now, whereas he previously needed 2 junior barristers to do a lot of research work for him, he can now do it with AI. Now, AI, as you quite rightly say, Rebecca, is not perfect, but what it does is it cuts out a lot of legwork, and he can then use his knowledge to focus in on exactly what he needs to. It's the same with Adobe. You can now use Adobe to effectively cut through a document and get it to summarize a document for you in one A4 page. I'm sure everybody knows that. So things are changing which are going to make, because a lot of government hides behind what I call volume of paper. So what we've got to somehow do is slim it down, and not all of my colleagues on this committee agree, but I would personally also use the opportunity of social media to shame people who don't deliver for the taxpayer. I think people who don't deliver need to be outed. They need to be shown not to be delivering, and then they will deliver. Because people, if they can do it in a dirty little dark corner, they don't do it. Whereas if it's public, they tend to do it. So look, I think there's a lot of things for us collectively to think about, and those were questions I just wanted to ask you.
On AI, then we're very clear that the way we're doing our audits will be radically different in just 5 years' time from now, and it's already changing. And the reason you can be confident this is a real change is that our teams are telling us we see the need for a different skill mix, we see the need for, and when it's the practitioners who are telling you that, then you know this is real. So, and we're working very closely with the firms because as we're not a direct competitor of theirs, they are very good at talking to us about their own strategies for AI implementation. We'll never be the kind of absolute leading edge of that compared to those global enterprises, but we see ourselves as a fast follower. In other words, which bits of this are really delivering benefits? Let's get hold of those and implement them. And so that's our strategy for the next few years. But the other key point to make, though, is it does, as an auditor, it always takes 2 to tango. You do need the bodies you're auditing to have robust digital systems, good controls, high-quality data, and when those conditions exist, then the audit can be ultra-efficient. But if you're grappling with legacy systems, poor quality data, controls that aren't operating, you have to go back to, well, let's go and test some of this stuff and find out whether it's actually being properly accounted for.
Then, as you know, in the private sector, Gareth, Chairman, if I can just have one more, the incentive to get your company's data into an efficient format, so your auditors can audit it, saves you money. So you actually do make sure your systems work, because if not, your auditor charges you more. It's very hard to get an auditor now. So there is more. Where's the incentive on the public sector to do that?
First of all, delivering the efficiency savings they've all been required to, and And of course, it won't just be helping the audit become more efficient if they've got high quality systems with good information. They'll be delivering better services at less cost to the taxpayer. So the incentive is being able to give you a better account of their performance on efficiency and delivery. And the audit is a byproduct of that.
Thank you.